When it comes to a good person, I would definitely say it has an excessive amount of cursing. But since Zach Braff knows Florence Pugh so well that he can literally create a whole character around her and really figure out ways to pull what he needs, it's a kind of film that definitely will pull on your heartstrings, even though it focuses on someone that probably shouldn't be able to get that reaction out of you. To summarize a good person, at one time, Nathan and Allison were the perfect relationship. They were high school sweethearts, they got engaged in their mid 20s, and from what it seems, their families at least liked each other. Maybe when it comes to Nathan's father, he might have not been thrilled, but he's a bit of a curmudgeon, so it is what it is. But when it comes to Nathan's sister and his brother in law, they love Allison. When it comes to Allison's mother, we could assume that she liked Nathan. We don't see any scenes between the two, and they don't really talk much, but the assumption can be there. However, on the way to going with Allison to do some dress shopping, Allison gets into an accident thanks to looking at her phone, and with that, her soon-to-be sister-in-law and brother-in-law die. This leaves Daniel, who is Nathan's father, having to take care of his granddaughter who's in her late teens, I think about 16. And while Nathan tried to reconcile and, continue on with the relationship, Allison's guilt and feelings about the whole thing pretty much made that impossible. Add in that Daniel was already poisoning Ryan's mind against Allison, and the path forward was too murky, and on top of that, Allison, while she was able to physically recover, in terms of emotionally and mentally recovering, it just wasn't possible. And in fact, she even attempts suicide multiple times. And when that doesn't take, she, ironically, gets addicted to the same pills that she was hawking from Purdue, which is oxycodone. Now, after about a year of kind of spiraling, she does decide to seek out help through a local AA meeting, and unfortunately for her, she ends up encountering Daniel during this. But since Daniel is not only trying to keep himself from drinking because raising Ryan is so difficult, but also maybe find some pathway so that he can be redeemed himself after all that he did that led Nathan to abandon him and not even at least come around for the sake of helping with raising Ryan, it seems that Daniel sees this as a test. And with that, he tries his best to get along and forge a better relationship with Allison just when she needs someone to not see her as this terrible being who ruined this whole family's life. When it comes to a good person, it's rated R, and pretty much the bulk of it, I would say, it deals with either cursing, drug use, attempted suicide, and that's about it. I mean, yes, there is a fight between Diane, who is Allison's mother, and her early on in the film, but I wouldn't say it's like a John Wick type of fight. Yes, Allison does end up bleeding, but it's not huge. Also, in terms of something beyond that, Daniel does threaten to shoot somebody with a gun, but it's for a good reason, because it definitely is alluded to when Daniel pulls out his gun that Ryan may be in a situation where she might get assaulted. Outside of that, there's drinking, drug use, the aforementioned attempted suicide, and also the depiction of bullying. Getting to the review portion. So the first highlight to me is definitely the music, and while I wouldn't say the music's on the level of Zach Braff's first big film, Garden State, I do feel that A Good Person is the closest he has come to capturing that indie music vibe that really made you want to check out the soundtrack. He's definitely had films since then, most of which honestly were a bit forgettable. But when it comes to A Good Person, whether you're talking about Florence Pugh's music, when she both writes and sings, since apparently that was one of her other loves, it's just acting took off first, and also of course the indie bands that Braff has on the soundtrack, you are definitely driven to stay during the credits to just see what was the names of certain things or the name of certain artists, so that when you go home to Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to music, you're able to quickly download, stream, save, whichever, so that you can keep those tracks on rotation. So the next highlight for us is that when it comes to navigating the grief, the trauma, and everything involved, if we're talking about Nathan's family, it's done in such a good way because there's layers to it. Daniel is a patriarch who is raising a grandchild who I wouldn't say he ever really had the best relationship with. They were cool, but not to the point where him transitioning into a guardian was something easy for either one of them. As Nathan makes clear, Daniel was the type of parent who ruled through fear rather than ruled through love, or rather I should say parented through love. And with that, you can see as Daniel and Ryan go back and forth with cursing at each other and everything, there's this power struggle there. And it's not that Ryan is trying to truly assert herself or anything like that. It's just she's from a different generation from Nathan. Cursing at her isn't going to make her cower and be fearful of you. It's going to get her riled up and try to show that this is not how you're going to be talking to me. Because if you talk to me like this, I'm going to talk to you even worse. And I'm going to strip away any type of authority that you think you have over me. Hence her not calling her grandpa. Hence her not calling him grandpa, rather. But instead calling him Daniel. Just so that even during the good moment, she can take him down a notch and show that while you do own this house, you may pay for everything, at the same time, I'm not a slave to you, I'm not incumbent to you. This situation purely is probably out of your own guilt, and I'm just benefiting from it. Which is perhaps not the best way to look at it, but when you hear them go back and forth, there's a clear notion that yes, there is some kind of love there, but it's so complicated by the situation that it can't be the type of love which allows them both to flourish. And when you add in that Nathan is completely absent and he's not trying to get involved in raising Ryan, honestly, it's a bit surprising that she doesn't have some vitriol for him as well, since she basically got abandoned with the kind of man where Nathan doesn't think that he would make a good father figure because he was terrible to him. So to leave his niece with this man, I mean, granted, Nathan is probably mid-20s. I don't know what kind of job he has. Never mind if he has the money to raise a child, even with whatever life insurance policy that Ryan's parents left behind. But there's just so much going on with that family that you could easily see them strip out the whole Allison part of it, just make that the ex, and you could have had a whole movie in itself. The next highlight for me is just how surprising it is that there's some trickery done that allows you to be empathetic and even sympathetic when it comes to Allison. Allison, granted, she only looked at her phone for a second and it was to get directions, I believe, but she still is what caused all of this. She going into a spiral, doing drugs, becoming an addict, and seeing all that, it's kind of like, yes, I get it. She feels guilt and everything, but this whole family, Nathan, Daniel, and Ryan, they're going through so much because they actually lost people in their lives. She lost a fiance and two people she was cool with, but this child is now growing up without their mother and father. This man now has to raise this teenager, and he lost his daughter, who actually he reconciled with and had a good relationship, compared to his son, who's still not forgiven him. It's like, all this is going on with them, and yet you want me to feel bad for this. I don't want to go there, but you want me to feel bad for this girl who... what? Yet it seems that, without forcing you to, Zach Braff knows how to tap into the charm of Florence. He knows how to use everything that perhaps made him fall in love with her so that you find yourself able to let go of all the apprehension you may have to really care about her, and this story kind of pushing you to take note of what she's going through, and you just let it go. And as she deals with addiction, as she tries to reconcile by being there for Ryan, trying to be a better person so that maybe she can get Daniel's approval or forgiveness rather, you let go of all those feelings of kind of being mad that this film is built around her, even though she, of the parties involved, suffered the least. I mean, granted, she was in a car accident, but you take note everything else long term and her healing. let's just say it leads to a lot of complicated emotions that even being separated from the film for like 3 or 4 days, kind of trying I'm still trying to deal with the fact that I felt bad, I think even cried for Allison's character, yet at the same time this film really feels like it shouldn't be that much about her. So the sole on-offense topic for us is just the excessive amount of cursing. And it's because a lot of the F-bombs and other expletives just seem so unnecessary, and you can tell that in some moments it's definitely meant to be a cathartic release. But after a certain point, the cursing just feels gratuitous. I would compare it to even, especially we're talking about American horror movies, it's like when American horror movies have all this gore and jump scares and it's made to compensate for lacking a tense or fear-inducing story. A good person doesn't need that extra punch-up. It already has good enough characters, performances, the writing, the directing, so having all this extra cursing in there, which I guess is supposed to like heighten the moment, the film doesn't need that extra boost. Overall, I would not say that a good person's going to win any awards, beyond maybe like an MTV award, but it is definitely a worthy addition to everyone's resumes who were involved.